So let's look at the, where is it? No way they got rid of it. No way. What? Yeah, it's right here. Look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Who could have foreseen this? I've been talking about this for months, so I need credit where credit is due. And for those of you who listened, you're up multiples and multiples on your money right now. Okay, you're up big money right now. Why? Because I've told you, I've said this. Global liquidity, markets, equity markets, crypto, all this shit is based off of liquidity. If the liquidity is there, markets will move up. If liquidity gets drained, if liquidity gets taken out of the markets, markets come down. Okay. And so you have this global M2. Global M2 is the monetary supply across the whole world. Okay. Monetary supply being what the Fed, the US government, the US Fed puts out into markets, what the European bank does, what the Japanese bank does, what the Chinese bank, etc. These federal reserves, they provide liquidity to their nations. This liquidity ends up finding itself in markets. So as these nations provide liquidity, that's how markets will behave because there's now more money in the supply. This is why right after COVID, you saw everything go fucking ballistic after that nuke in March of 2020. If you look at the S&P from March of 2020, it was up only since then. Okay, down here. Okay, you get this massive nuke. Everybody lost their minds. Everybody thought it was over. Everything's going to zero. You get this 35% drawdown in equities, which for crypto guys, that means nothing. We're used to 80% drawdowns. But everybody was cowards. G did sold the bottom, and then we were literally up only all the way through January of 2022, right? Why did that happen? Why were we up only for 2 years? For 2 years, we did not go down. Because after COVID, they had to print a lot of money to stimulate the economy. They increased the monetary supply by 40%. They almost doubled the monetary supply within a year. Well, you can see that take place over here. Look at this. Look at this right here. COVID, March of 2020. What happened right after COVID? Literally straight up only for 2 years. That's whenever the bull market stopped, when it stopped moving up. They almost doubled. They almost added. They added 50% of the monetary supply. Huge. That's why markets went ballistic. Ballistic. Ever since then, we've been kind of moving in a range. Okay. So you could say something like this. Okay. Ever since last bull market, we've been ranging with the global M2, the liquidity. Okay. So we're ranging in here, meaning that the monetary supply isn't really growing. It either came down, and you noticed how as the monetary supply decreased this entire time, what happened to Bitcoin and equity markets? You go into a bear market. That's when bear markets occur. Bear markets occur whenever liquidity, monetary supply is decreasing, meaning that there's less money out there circulating. Well, if there's less money circulating, there's less money in markets. So the markets come down. So you see, as soon as global M2 comes down, this is when you enter this bear market for Bitcoin and also equities and other assets. But of course, we're in crypto. So BTC and crypto goes into a bear market, right? Because liquidity. As we hit this low, notice where the low on Bitcoin was. Right here. You see? So global liquidity bottoms, Bitcoin bottoms, right? Lowest liquidity, lowest bottom in the bear market. Since here, we've been ranging up on global liquidity until finally July of 24, August 24, we broke out of the range on the global monetary supply. We finally broke out. Well, when we finally broke out, what was this in context? Look at where we finally broke out over here. So we finally break out on global liquidity to all-time highs. Now it's at new all-time highs in September. What happened over here? Boom, Bitcoin shoots to new all-time highs. Isn't that interesting how that's correlated, right? So this is a leading indicator. Leading indicator meaning that whatever happens on this chart first, later is what's going to happen in equities and in crypto. So you break out to new all-time highs on global liquidity for the first time since the COVID last bull market. We go into new all-time highs for Bitcoin. There's new money, more money than there was before. Make sense? Beautiful. So we shoot, we pump. We pump on liquidity, we pump on Bitcoin. Notice, interesting how everything works out, with almost everything works out on a TA level, which is nice. Is like I was saying, you have this range on global liquidity, and as soon as you break out of the range, we go to new all-time highs on Bitcoin, but then we draw back down and just TA, it works. You come down and you retest the top of the range that we had right here. So look, global liquidity pulls back. You retest the top of the range. Well, what do you do on Bitcoin? Well, global liquidity just came back and retested this range. This is a leading indicator, meaning that, okay, probably a pullback in equities and in crypto. Look what happens. You get a pullback on Bitcoin, right? Pullback in global liquidity, pullback on Bitcoin. And then what I started saying in March, April, if you go back and watch the live streams, and for those inside the Discord know this, what I had been saying since this retest of the range on global liquidity, we've now started pumping higher, and not only higher, but new all-time highs. Now global liquidity is the highest it's ever been, and it's continuing to shoot up higher. Look, this is on the daily time frame. It's at all-time highs as we currently speak, global liquidity. What do you think that means for risk assets? What do you think that means for markets? We're not going into a bear market right now, ladies and gentlemen. You don't go into a bear market whenever liquidity is increasing, okay? So this is a leading indicator. I said, oh, global liquidity is pumping. Guess what's going to happen to Bitcoin? Bitcoin's going to pump. Cycle's not over. It's going to go higher, right? So it starts pumping from here. Bitcoin bottoms right here, right? So it's mirroring this down move. Hits here. This is a leading indicator. Now this is going up to new all-time highs. Bitcoin is finally catching up. Bitcoin is now pumping. Because liquidity is at new all-time highs, I expect Bitcoin to go to new all-time highs. You see that? So that's the context in which we're trading in which we're investing in. Not the end of a bull run. This is just the beginning of it. This is just the beginning of this leg. Okay? So this, on a lower time frame, more zoomed in, you say, oh man, are we going to break to new all-time highs? What's going on? Are we pulling back now? Etc. Yeah, we are. Does anybody know exactly when? No. Could be tomorrow, could be next week. But at some point, whether we draw back down to 97K, 96K, pump back up to, 114 and reject, whatever it may be, we're going up higher on a long enough time frame.